Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Florian. I'm the research director of the LSEUPR this year, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all to our very first student research dialogue. First things first, as I said today, thank you all, as I already said, sorry, thank you all so much for coming today. I think my favorite thing by far about LSE is how enthusiastic people are about research. And I think seeing how many of you turned out today to come to this discussion is kind of a testament to this enthusiasm. So thank you all very much. Of course, a special thank you goes to our panelists who represent some of the leading student-led journals at LSE. In addition, we're super grateful to welcome Claire Gordon, the director of the LSE Eden Center, and Lucy Lamb, who is in charge of managing the Houghton Street Press. We'll give a chance to each panelist to introduce themselves shortly. But before we do that, I just want to give you kind of an overview of the plan that we came up for today. So after that, like initial round of introductions, Claire and Lucy will each talk about their work and share some thoughts on how it relates to the activities of student-led journals such as the UPR and the other journals who are present. Then these short presentations will be the perfect starting point, I think, for the main part of today's program, which will be an informal discussion on like the benefits and challenges of student research at LSE and beyond. And I think we like hope to kind of get out of this discussion, kind of like we see as a brainstorming session on how to get more students involved and how to like further research at LSE, especially at the undergraduate and like master's level. So we kind of expect this to last for about an hour, depending on how it goes. And then we'll see, we'll probably have some time left at the end for a short Q&A from the audience for about like 10 or 15 minutes. Before we start, I just want to do some like technical housekeeping. We are recording today's event. If you would rather not be on the recording, either as a panelist or as an attendee who may ask a question later on, just please feel free to turn your camera off. That's completely fine. Yeah, as I said before, also, we will open the floor for comments from the audience at the end. However, if you feel like you want to ask a question during our discussion, or you feel like there's a specific point that we have missed, which might be the case, just use the raise hand function and we'll make sure to, I hope that I will see your request to speak and I will I will give you the floor. Yeah, related to that, we kind of came up with a list of topics that we would want to talk about that we think would be interesting for us to discuss. But if there's anything that you as panelists or you as attendees would be interested to hear about, please just let me know in the chat. Okay, so thanks for bearing with me on that. The boring administrative stuff is out of the way. I would now like to give a chance to each of the panelists to introduce themselves and their organization briefly. And I think we should go by seniority here and let Claire speak first, if that's fine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Claire Gordon, and I'm director of the Eden Center. And for those of you who don't know what the Eden Center is, we are a center which is focused on making education better for everybody, all students at LSE. We predominantly work with faculty on all aspects of education: teaching, learning, curriculum design, student partnership work. But we've also, and I'll say something a bit more about that in a minute, we've also kind of had a big strand of our work devoted to building research into the curriculum over a number of years, and I'll share something about that with you soon. But it's great to be here, and I think it's a victory that this event is taking place. It suggests that we've actually made some progress along the way.
Thanks so much, Claire. Lucy?
Hi, everyone. My name's Lucy Lamb. I'm a scholarly communications officer in the library, and my job is to manage LSE Press, Houghton Street Press, and support all of our student editorial boards. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, I'll say more about what I do and how it relates to student research later on.
Thanks so much, Lucy. Okay, as for the other panelists, there's no specific order that I'm basing this on. It's just the order that you're coming up as on my screen. Maybe Mark, you want to go first?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, and I'm the managing editor of the London Conflict Review, which is a student postgraduate journal that focuses in the area of conflict studies, so peace building, transitional justice, those sorts of themes, with a focus on publishing work from postgraduate students within LSE and also at other universities. We are unique, I think, in this call in that as a journal we started this year. So as an initiative of postgraduate students in the MSc Conflict Studies program. So we're experiencing an aggressive learning curve at the moment and learning lots of things about running a journal. And so I'm excited to share that experience with you. And then we're also going to be hosting our first ever conference in October, a first ever academic conference. So we're also looking forward to that as well.
Cool, thank you so much. Vernon, you're up next.
Hi everyone, I'm the academic director of the Undergraduate Political Review, and the UPR does all sorts of things related to encouraging the research in political sciences at the undergrad level. So not only do we do, so we have multiple divisions which deal with political science research, and the first and most prominent, I think, would be the research division, which kind of gathers together several undergrad teams to engage in research questions across the year. And besides that, we have the academic division, which deals with all kinds of questions related to political science at the curriculum level. So what the academic division, which is a new thing that we've started this year, is to try to introduce what political science is all about as a field and as a subject to incoming political science students at the first year level, and to students outside the government department who are less familiar about what political science is all about. So I hope to introduce some of the ideas that we've been sort of fomenting over the year, like in our discussions ahead. And just to quickly go over the other things that UPR does, we have the editorial team, which deals with a lot of blog posts and content, which isn't exactly the sort of like really like full pieces of research that the research division does, and not exactly the curriculum-based things that the academic division does. So these are small blog pieces of around 800 to 1,000 words that we publish quite regularly. So yeah, in short, UPR deals with everything related to political science, and we try to be as sort of like diverse and with our mediums as possible to kind of share this content. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vernon. Eddie, you're up next.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Eddie. I'm the head of research for LSE Academic Society. We are, as we like to advertise ourselves, one of the largest academic societies at LSE. And so for the research division, what we do is similar to the UPR. So every year we have 5 research groups that consist of undergraduates and postgraduate students. We work to produce relatively quantitative and intensive research papers. And we also have an editorial board with undergraduates and postgraduate students who then help review and publish the papers. So this year would mark the 3rd volume for Rationale, which is our self-managed student journal. So previously, Rationale was a working paper series before it became a formal serious student journal. And other than that, we also do some other work, including hosting an annual essay competition with over 1,000 students last year to help improve accessibility of economic discussions to high school students around the world. And we also hosted our first ever student research incubator session to all the LSE undergraduate students to provide them with some basic training of econometrics and data analysis to allow them to see what research in economics is like.
Cool. That sounds great. Thanks so much. Philippos.
Hello, everyone. My name is Philippos. I'm an assistant editor and peer reviewer for the Journal of Policy and Economics and Health Economics. Along with Mark, as you mentioned, we are a new journal. We've just been set up actually at the start of the academic term. I've not been involved since the start, but I got a good idea of the journey the journal has gone through until it's come to publish its first issue soon. So we very much look forward to that. We have been set up within the Department of Health Policy, or I should say with the aid of the Department of Health Policy, and we accept research papers, commentaries, policy briefs, and systematic reviews, literature reviews in the fields of health economics, health policy, and health-related fields such as health services research and public health epidemiology, anything that has to do with health, basically. Yeah, our experience, I think, as Mark also mentioned, we are quite junior, learning a lot. It's definitely been a steep learning curve. So I really look forward to joining you in this discussion to take our journal forward.
Thanks so much. Zoya, you're up next. And I just want to say, I promise you guys, I didn't choose the guys to speak first. This is just the way you came up on the panel. I'm really sorry. I promise it wasn't intentional. Zoya, you're up.
Yeah. Hi. Oh, sorry.
Is it me?
Yeah, it's you. Sorry.
So hi everyone, my name is Zoya and I'm the head of research for the LSE International Development Society. I serve as the editor-in-chief of the LSE International Development Review. The journal itself is very newly set up. We just had our first issue on 12th March, a few days back. And our articles are compiled by our research subcommittee and they are edited by another section of our research subcommittee as well. So all our writers are basically a part of the society, they're all members. And our articles, they focus on incorporating a range of international development fields. So we'll have articles relating to migration studies, to population health, to the political economy, to human development, and many other subfields of international development. I think for us, the most crucial aspect or the most crucial aim for our journal is to produce research that has important implications for policy and, more importantly, sustainable policy making, and to introduce debates surrounding policy. I would say that's our main aim. But other than the journal itself, as a part of the society's collective to promote research, we also have blog posts. So this year we had a series of blogs on Black History Month, and they were also related to research. So we have a lot of things going on, but right now the journal is our sort of biggest initiative to promote research. And I'm really looking forward to gaining insights from today's talk, just so that we can improve research at the LSE Interdev Review as well.
Cool. Thank you so much. Excited to have you. Emily, you're next.
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm the community editor for Earthrise Journal, which is a relatively new journal set up just over 2 years ago at the LSE, and our content mainly covers all issues around environment, particularly notions of environmental justice, social justice, and that sort of thing. I guess a little different to the rest of the publications here is that we take a lot more of a creative expression of research. We are a very multimedia journal. We take films, we take photography, we take poetry, we take all sorts of like forms of content. So yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you guys today about how this kind of unconventional aspect of our journal can be like what we can learn from like your more conventional setups and such like. And yeah, that's Earthrise.
Thanks so much. That's why we were like particularly eager to have you, because it kind of like your approach differs a lot, and I think we can learn a lot from you in the end, because I think, as we'll tease out later, one of the big benefits of student research is that it kind of lends itself to like alternative ways of presenting and doing it. Cool. Thank you so much. Serafima.
Hi everyone, my name is Serafima. I'm a master's student. I'm studying management of information systems and digital innovation, and our journal, IS Channel, is focused on the social study of information systems. In other words, on ICTs and their social implications. So this is an annual journal. We perform a double-blinded peer review of all the works. So we try to engage with our writers and attract people to participate in a peer review.
So this year we are kind of now in the middle of the peer review, like we are about to choose all the works. And this is pretty much it. I look forward to any questions and to participate in the dialogue, because it's really amazing that there are so many initiatives around. Thanks.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, everyone. So without further ado, I'll just pass the floor to Claire first now, if that's fine.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, it's been wonderful to hear about the sort of variety and of journals, new and old, more established, cutting across disciplines at LSE. So, I mean, it's a great honor to be here. I think I was asked to talk about how the Eden Centre has supported the development of research on taught student programs at LSE. And I have actually been at the LSE 20 years, and I started off as a postdoc in the government department. So, so I've had quite a journey myself. But what I'm going to do, try and keep it brief, is just to say that personally, I've seen researchers at the heart of my vision of what I think an LSE education should constitute for over a decade now. And it's been something that I've been working to embed in different ways, to embed different opportunities for students to engage in research, both inside and outside the curriculum, for almost 10 years. And it may come as a surprise to some of you that while the postgraduate master's dissertation, not in all, but in quite a few disciplines, has been embedded for a while, the notion that undergraduate research should run through an undergraduate program and should be at the heart of a student's education is something that is much more recent part and ongoing part of cultural change at LSE. So but I think there's a really strong rationale. We're a research intensive university. We have the great good fortune to be surrounded by scholars who are doing great groundbreaking research in almost every single discipline. And we should see that there are absolutely natural synergies between research and education. And for me, in many ways, the skills and the processes of conducting a research project are absolutely the skills that we want our students at LSE to be developing. Identifying, coming up with ideas, framing questions, choosing appropriate methodologies to answer those questions, because sometimes you set up a question and then your data doesn't answer the question. So collecting the data, analyzing the data, coming up with conclusions, and then at the vital point in the chain, which is so often overlooked, and which is why this panel and you people are so amazing, is the dissemination and showcasing of that research. And I think there's just way too much stuff in our academic studies these days that is only seen by us and a very small group of people, maybe ourselves as writers and a handful, one or two people who mark our work, and it doesn't go anywhere. So I think that you're doing absolutely stellar work. And of course, finally, just to say that, and I'm going to just talk very briefly about what we've tried to do inside and outside the curriculum, but I should say that this whole push towards research-based education has taken on a whole new momentum with the arrival of Professor Dilly Fung as our Pro-Director for Education. And those of you, not that I'm expecting you to, because strategy documents tend to be strategy documents, but nonetheless, research-based education is one of the key priorities sitting under Education for Global Impact. So the work you're doing is at the cutting edge of that institutional strategic priority. So just briefly, in terms of inside the curriculum, what we've been doing in the Eden Centre, and prior to that, we're not that old, in the Teaching and Learning Centre, as we were previously known, is to work with faculty, work with academics on the processes of course design and course review, to expand the notion of what it means to do education at the heart of the curriculum, and to diversify methods of assessment. And I think we need to acknowledge there are many different ways for us all to engage with research. We can learn about and experience the methods of undertaking research. We can engage with a discipline through engaging with the cutting edge research of that discipline. And we can conduct our own research projects. And obviously we can also, and it was great to hear from Emily, that they're looking at sort of diverse ways of disseminating research. There are many ways in which we can get our research out into the community to a wider audience. And we've done things like we've run teaching cafes to bring faculty together to share experience of how they are integrating research into their own teaching, and actually they're pretty passionate about it, or at least some of them are. And we also run development workshops for faculty, because we absolutely don't believe in doing things for the sake of doing things, like using technology gadgets for the sake of using technology gadgets, although that's a weird thing to say this year, I know. But where it makes sense pedagogically, where it makes sense in terms of what you're learning in your discipline, then yes, let's just build it in, let's design it appropriately. So what we've seen is a very significant expansion of opportunities to do research at the postgraduate and undergraduate level. And I absolutely salute that and think we should be doing more of it. At the other end, let's just say, this is my last set of comments, are about research outside the curriculum. So in 2011, which is a long time ago now, we introduced a project that some of you will know about called LSE Groups, which enables undergraduate students for 2 weeks at the end of the summer term to work in cross-disciplinary, cross-year groups, and they carry out an entire research project from inception to presentation at a final conference. And that was pretty groundbreaking across the sector when it was introduced, and had transformative effects for many of the students that participated. And so LSE Groups, though we had to cancel it for the last 2 years, actually has had quite sort of transformative effects on students who've experienced it. We've created opportunities for students to go to outside LSE. God forbid that LSE looks outside the doors of LSE for about 5 minutes, but nonetheless, we've created opportunities to go to Posters in Parliament and the British Conference of Undergraduate Research, which are UK sector-based initiatives bringing together undergraduates and sometimes postgraduates to present their research to a wider audience. And there, in fact, exists something called ICUR, which is the International Conference of Undergraduate Research, which they run over 48 hours across all different time zones, and they have their keynote speakers at those magic hours, those magic points in the day where most time zones come together. I mean, most countries' time zones just about work together. Since 2018, we've had increased funding, and again, I link that very much to the arrival of Dilly. So we've got a research internship and assistantship scheme, and we've encouraged departments to apply and faculty to apply for money to run their own research assistantship opportunities. And some departments also who are richer, obviously some departments are richer across the school than others, they run their own internal internship schemes. And we've also, some of you will have heard of the Changemakers program, which is another opportunity for students to undertake research, this time about education at LSE. So we become the objects of study, our institution, the way we do education becomes the object of academic study. And those are pieces of academic rigorous research, but on an applied subject. As we come to the end of this rather difficult pandemic year, one thing we're really excited about, and some of you will have heard about, is that we're going to run our first student interdisciplinary research conference this summer in June, and we very much hope that that students who are thinking of submitting stuff to your journals will see it as a sort of good opportunity to give an initial outing to a piece of research by presenting it in a conference. And we're offering multiple media opportunities, so it can be a more traditional paper, it can be a poster, it could be a photograph, it could be an oral presentation, and I think we see these opportunities going hand in hand with the work of the journals. And of course, the other important, exciting thing that I didn't mention, but should have mentioned, but I know Lucy's coming next, so she will speak about it in great depth, is the foundation of the Houghton Street Press, which is another fantastic LSE development, centering research at the heart of what we do as a scholarly community, because ultimately education is a scholarly endeavour and research is a scholarly endeavour, and we shouldn't see them in two separate worlds. We should see them as the same world. So that's all I was going to say. I'm really hopeful. It's really good to hear that some of you see yourself as having a bit of a campaigning role, to not just sort of be there to receive the submissions from students, but also to campaign and influence faculty and departmental leaderships and even the school leadership to centre research even further at the heart of the LSE experience. And there's no question that LSE will listen to its students, so keep shouting very loudly. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Claire. That was great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with, I mean, I think the overarching point of what you just said is that bringing research to the heart of education is such a systemic venture. Like, it has to start with us, and it has to go like up to the, you know, senior levels of management. And I think LSE has actually done a pretty good job in fostering this kind of like research-led education, as you say, over the past couple of years. Great, thank you so much. Lucy?
Hi, I have slides, so I'm going to just share my screen. Hopefully it will work. So I hope you can see slides.
I can see them, yeah.
Good. Okay. So thanks for inviting me to be on the panel today. I'm going to start with a bit of background to the Houghton Street Press and sort of why it was set up back in 2019. So at that time, there were about 6 existing student journals at LSE, and they were sort of scattered about on different websites and platforms. They had varying levels of support from their departments, from the school, or from students' union societies. So our plan was to create a central platform for student journals that would give a consistent level of support from the library, some academic oversight, and would also lend the school's brand identity. And we did this by giving the journals a professional website and a journal management system. So the year before, we had just launched the LSE Press. So we had some experience of setting up a publishing platform, and we'd gained some technical skills in doing that as well. We thought the Houghton Street Press could be an imprint of the main LSE Press, and they share the same technology and they share the same governance. So there's the LSE Press editorial board, and then sitting underneath that is a Houghton Street Press subcommittee, which is to be confirmed, but is coming. But it's sort of a distinctly separate student press. So sharing the LSE Press platform, but very different as well. And we think we're the first university press to do this. I haven't found another one in the world that is doing it, so I'll say that we're the first. In the longer term, our goal was, and still is, to support more student journals and create a community of student editors who would learn from library publishing staff, but also would learn from each other. So I think we've achieved that. We've expanded, almost doubled our roster of student journals, and we've got a growing community of editors, and events like this are really helping to foster that kind of community with all of you working together. There's lots of platforms for student writing at LSE, so there's blogs and the Beaver and the Clare Market Review if you feel creative, and those are all really fantastic for students, but the Houghton Street Press provides the opportunity to run an academic journal in the exact same way that the journals that you read and study are run. The only difference is that you're students. Houghton Street Press journals give the opportunity to work as a team with an editorial board. You'll plan out issues, manage the peer review process, and promote the journal through social media and other sort of launch events. And currently those are mostly online, but have proved to be pretty popular. So we feel like we've provided a kind of sandpit through Houghton Street Press, and this has led to some of our student journals actually being more innovative and experimental than the LSE Press journals, which are all pretty traditional. So some journals have blogs like the LSE Law Review, there's podcasts from the Public Sphere Journal, and all of you are organising conferences and events like this one, and like the Undergraduate Political Review conference last week, which was great. There are challenges to publishing student research. It can be really difficult to get the word out to students who might not even be aware that it's possible to publish while they're studying at an undergraduate or master's level, or even know that there's journals out there that they might be interested to read. Students are very transient, so they graduate and a whole new set of editors have to be recruited, trained, and basically start publishing, before the year runs out. Student publishing can also bring up really tough ethical questions around plagiarism, the use of copyright material, peer review, conflicts of interest. And these issues also affect professional academic journals, but something unique to student journals is a discussion that I think we should probably have around the perpetuity of student publications. So it's possible that some of our authors will look back in 5 or 10 years and be unhappy that they publish some student work, or maybe will disagree with what they said at that time. And this has happened recently with one of our journals. So what should the publisher's position be on this, and what is the position of editorial boards? But at this point, I just want to congratulate all of our student editors at Houghton Street Press for continuing to publish through the pandemic and just making it work. The student publishing side of my job is made so enjoyable because I get to work with students who are so enthusiastic about what they're studying at LSE, and that they want to do even more to contribute to their field, and it's really commendable and impressive. I'm really interested in the discussion we'll have today because the service we provide through the library and Houghton Street Press is designed to be ever-changing, I hope, and responsive to what students want from their time at university. So I'll be taking lots of notes and hopefully contributing to a lively discussion. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Lucy. I think I speak on behalf of at least the whole UPR, and I'm guessing of many of the panelists here when I say that, like, thank you so much for all the support you've given to us. It's been really helpful and great. Okay, cool. I think given this presentation and the presentation we heard from Claire, the perfect starting point for our discussion kind of would be to talk about the benefits and like advantages of student research, because we'll get to all the like challenges that we all face in a minute, but I feel like it would be good to just establish like what the benefits of student research are vis-a-vis like more academic, professional, traditional research, because I feel like that has some of the like avenues for like addressing some of the challenges that we face that we'll talk about afterwards. But I think we should just start with the more pleasant stuff. So I guess without further ado, my first question for all the panelists is, what do you think are the most important merits of student research? How is it different from like more traditional academic or professional research? And yeah, who wants to go first? Don't be shy, guys.
Well, I'm happy to go first, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Eddie.
Yeah, so thanks to Claire and Lucy for your wonderful speeches. That was really thought-provoking. And so about the benefits of student research, I have been thinking about this from the first year at LSE. I'm a second year student at the moment as an undergrad. And I got interested in research after having seen the posts from LSE Economics Department in recruiting some student research assistants. And I got curious about, how can students actually contribute to some of the very serious, intimidating work that some of the professors at Economics Department really do. And having helped run Rationale and the research division for a year, I feel like there are a few really main merits of student research. And I think the main one is really the incentives are different in the sense that when academics do research, they're under certain pressure to publish. There is an element of that, but for students, our research process is more exploratory in nature, and we don't feel that we're as pressure to publish, fancy results, or we don't feel the strong incentives to get something out. It's more about satisfying intellectual curiosity and really learning about the process of research. So that's what I feel is really important, what I felt was really great to do student research.
Cool, thank you so much. Does anyone want to respond, add on to that?
I completely agree with what Eddie said. And I think definitely student research is much more explorative in the sense that when there are research fellowships or research assistantships, they tend to be in the field the professor or the faculty member wants it to be, and it serves their interest more narrowly than it does of the student. So I think in terms of research, it does, like these journals, they do give authors a lot of space to navigate their area of research interest. And because in our journal, we have a subcommittee and I'm constantly in contact with them, there's been a few times that I've seen when initially I speak to the authors and they tell me that this is the topic we'll be doing and this is our area of research interest. And then the next follow-up meeting I have with them, they've changed or they've tweaked their topic because they've said, well, you know, we researched a bit, we didn't like this, we found that more interesting, and now we're researching that. So I think just the fact that it allows you more, I think, area to explore is the biggest advantage.
Cool, thanks so much. To all the panelists, don't like wait for me to call on you, just jump in at any time if you want. Yeah, if anyone, Philippos, I see you have unmuted.
Yeah, I'll add to Eddie's and Zoya's comments. I think I completely agree with what they say, that the student research that is carried out as part of courses, assessments, or let's say dissertations, if you're at master's level or undergrad level, you can be looking at topics that might not be fancy or publishable, but at the same time, you are promoting research that can be answering very important research questions and adding to a sort of body of literature that sometimes is quite underlooked or under researched. This has certainly been the case with what I've seen with our journal, which at this time there's so much interest in health policy, health economics, and a lot of commentaries and policy briefs are coming into what we should do, what works in the COVID-19 pandemic, but also other sort of research, original research papers that some of them I was quite impressed by the quality and how rigorous they were. Some were part of trials, some were independent, and some you had multiple authors, and some you just had one. But it's definitely the case that that there are interesting results, and the open access nature of our journals just makes it makes this knowledge very very accessible. I would certainly see myself using some of these publications in the future in something I write up. So it's great to know that I can actually utilize what my peers have been researching. I'll just add one last bit, that despite the fact that we do want students to publish their work, to work towards publishing something, and to contribute to regional research, at least from my experience and also being a peer reviewer, we still try to maintain and sort of target the academic rigor that is expected of a high quality journal. So we have had to reject quite a few submissions. It's not that we take anything that comes through. We still will publish good research. It's just that, as you said, it doesn't have to. We don't have any competing interests that would potentially stop us from publishing something.
Cool, thank you so much. Actually, I think that reminds me of something that Lucy mentioned in her presentation. So I would be really curious to hear your thoughts on, like, I feel like part of the whole like student research venture is to just kind of democratize the production of research and like reduce the barriers that people face, because it's, you know, you don't have to become a professor before you can publish something. All the while have to kind of to maintain the like rigor and quality. And I mean, you're partially responsible for what you publish. So maybe you could, like, Lucy, just like share a few thoughts on how you have, like, you know, experienced that trade-off, I guess.
The trade-off between what? Between publishing high quality? Yeah,
like wanting to like give students a chance to like publish their stuff, their ideas, get them out there on the one hand, but then on the other hand to make sure that you know is quality work that is, you know, like has similar standards to what you would read on a professional journal, I guess.
Yeah. Well, one of the criteria for our journals to be published on the Houghton Street Press is they need to have some kind of academic oversight. So there needs to be someone in a department who is aware of what's going on, not necessarily reading everything, but is giving some kind of academic steer to the journal. But on the other hand, we don't require, a very rigorous peer review process. We don't demand double-blind peer review from our students, because we know it's very difficult to actually find reviewers. So we're very happy if you are just, reviewing as an editorial board or, within a society, that's totally fine. But it's about teaching you about the process of peer review and how papers are produced and how there's different ways to peer review academic papers, and that results in maybe a different kind of journal depending on how you approach it. But this is all like cutting edge, and the student journals have embraced this really well, and this is something that professional academic journals are grappling with and trying to figure out how to democratize their publishing practice, but also maintain high quality, and how to make things more transparent with peer review, but also keep their double-blind standard peer review that they love so much. So it's really interesting, because you as students are already open to trying new things and being very practical, which is difficult with some of the more traditional journals.
Yeah, just to come in here, because I think we have a lot, Earthrise's sort of editorial policy is a lot different to a lot of what probably the rest of the journals is. And obviously we do have a strict editing process, but the peer review is probably a little less rigorous, because I think the sort of ethos that we try to take on is that like everyone is on a research journey, and a lot of the people like interested in publishing content on Earthrise, this might be their first or second time ever writing beyond essays. And what that means is that they want just the experience for the first time of having their work reviewed by others, and finding their feet in exploring things that they want. And we're very open from the outset. They pitch their idea to us, and we will immediately give feedback before they've even written it, sort of like why we think the idea. We also have workshops like before each issue, where we talk about our ideas and stuff verbally beforehand, and allow for like a sort of informal review of other people's ideas, if that makes sense, because we're chatting beforehand. And I think that really is a different way of peer review, I guess, because you're like putting your ideas out to other people. Sure, maybe it's not as rigorous of a process, but having that verbal conversation, it helps the person who's writing, it helps us as editors to see what people want, and it helps other people encourage ideas. And I think that is kind of, it's one way of making sure that you keep up some kind of standards, but also making sure it's very accessible, and sort of creating an open dialogue between us and the researchers.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on the quality and exploration trade-off that we were talking about earlier. And I think one really interesting way that at least the UPR has went about that is to kind of share the research ideas created by our research teams with potential professors in our department who specialize in that area. So this has been something, again, quite new that we're starting this year, which sort of fulfills the whole democratization of knowledge thing that we were getting at, because we're looking at the students' research interests first and trying to match them, hopefully, to an academic that specializes in that area. And that allows undergrads to explore on one hand, but also get the quality feedback and the direction from the professor on the other. Because, and this saves a lot of time, especially in the whole, in the starting phases of research, when you're planning a methodology or approach, to really get a proper academic to walk you through the process and to tell you in advance, far in advance, whether or not you're completely misguided from the start. So this really kind of saves a lot of trouble, changing the topic, in the months ahead. So, yeah, so this is sort of like an interesting reversal of what Zoya was talking about with regards to the research assistantships. So in this case, the students are going to the professors with ideas to try to, perhaps pitch a cool idea to them, rather than, the professors trying to pitch a very scarce opportunity to many students. So yeah, I guess the limitation of this approach is possibly how free and available the professor is, and to begin with, because they aren't kind of obliged to keep, there aren't like dissertation advisors, they aren't obliged to keep up with your research, and it's really, I guess out of pure goodwill. But I guess this also relates back to what Claire was talking about earlier, where we're trying to kind of increase or foster the culture of increased contact between the department and its students, to kind of just like make this a more normal and thing to do, like this sort of like feedback facilitation between the professors and students interested in research.
Thanks so much, Vernon. Mark, you had unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I find this comment really interesting about involving academics in the process of pitching ideas for research papers. I think I have two questions about how that process works. One is, how do you manage the interest of the academics in helping with those kinds of projects? Because even in the context of taking a class with some academics, it's not always that easy to access them, simply because there's high time commitments often that they have. And then also, how is that process structured on your side? Is that a Zoom call with the professor, or are you mediating those conversations? Is it a conversation you're having with the professor and then relaying feedback to the student? I'm curious how the process works.
So I think I can speak to this because I'm the research director. So I came up with this change this year. So the way we did it in the research division at the UPR, we kind of recruit research projects first, like a research team leader and their project kind of together. And then I just sat down with each of them and went through the government department's professor faculty list, and just kind of tried to figure out which one of them might potentially be interested in this topic or have expertise on this methodology. Just a really simple matching interest with the project process, I guess. And then in terms of managing the professor's interests, I think we were just really clear with them from the start that this is a bit of a commitment and we would love their help. But there's not any formal recognition past having an acknowledgement in the final paper if it comes to that. There's obviously no obligation for them to keep up with the project. But what we found actually, and this has been, because this was my main worry at the beginning of introducing this, that professors would say, okay, yeah, we'll definitely help with this, and then they will meet with the students once and then they'll just kind of drop out. Our experience has been quite the opposite. All the professors have been extremely helpful, extremely involved, very approachable, have always basically made time. We've had professors last week at the conference drop in on their projects, conference presentations and such. So in terms of that, I think one of the main challenges to this interaction between students and professors is that the students think that the professors are unapproachable and they're not interested in this kind of work. And the professors potentially aren't that great at communicating with the students that, they're open for doing these kinds of things. And in the end, if when they do come together, the two of them, it usually, in my experience anyways, works out great. Cool. I'm curious to hear what other people's thoughts on the whole bridging the gap between students and faculty are, because I think that's one of the key. Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, thank you, Florian. I think it's a really important conversation. I think that academic staff on the whole are delighted to welcome students as part of the scholarly community. I think they want to hear that the person is serious. So if I think about, my PhD was on reform in the Soviet Union, and I used to teach on transition in Central Eastern Europe and EU accession. And I think that if students just were to approach someone with a very vague idea, I'm kind of interested in looking at conditionality in Eastern Europe, I think that is not necessarily welcomed. But if someone has got a bit of an idea that's been formulated and is reasonable, is to a degree precise, it's clear that there's a kernel of a good idea there, which the student might benefit from a discussion with someone who's just a little bit more experienced. We're all scholars. the kind of professors are just a bit further down the journey. And we have to accept that some of the students won't want to become academics, but they do want to do research as well. So I think it's just about treating the academic with a degree of that respect, that you recognize they're busy, but you're really interested in doing some research, and you've got an idea that's more or less formulated. I think then most people will be absolutely delighted, because in a way, research is what, at a place like LSE, research is what has brought them, research and teaching is what has brought them into this profession. And to have, it's just, I've heard, in the government department, I've heard LSEUPR, who's a political theorist, talk about teaching-based research, teaching-led research. So flipping research-led teaching to teaching-led research, which suggests that, academics actually can be inspired by this sort of scholarly work of their students. So I think you're right. I think there's some myth busting, Florian, respectful myth busting that needs to be done. And people are busy, but they make time when they think that it's worthwhile. And certainly students engaging in different types of research is more than worthwhile.
Philippos, go ahead. You can just unmute yourself. You don't have to wait for me to pick on you.
So that's a very interesting discussion. And while you were talking about it, I had some thoughts on something similar I have experience from, which I wanted to ask you of how you've run your scheme, how you have run this scheme up to now with finding researchers to engage with students on specific projects. I have a medical background. I actually still am a medical student studying for an undergraduate degree. I'm also doing a postgraduate degree at the LSE at the moment. It's kind of a mixed situation, and it's an in-between sort of degree I'm doing. But I've been involved with a society that's basically the surgical society of my university, which is King's College London. And I think for the last 2 years, we've been running this scheme, or like a mentorship scheme, by which you find surgeons that might be interested in shadowing, having out of them and assist them in research projects. You sign them up to that, so it's completely voluntary, and then you have students match with them according to the projects that they have. Our experience with that has been that once you formalize the process and once you make it extremely explicit that these people are giving you their time, their very limited time to be doing this, both for the researchers and for the students, it becomes a sort of commitment that it's not like I just signed up to this and I can not worry about it. So when you go into the process, you have to commit the time, you have to be doing stuff, you cannot just drop out. So my question to all of you actually is, how do you think it could work in our context? And if we could set up some sort of formal process like this one, where we can engage researchers with the research projects and find students that might want to get involved and maintain a sort of, let's say, good level of engagement.
So the International Development Review, we did sort of the same thing this year. What we did was at the beginning, we made it clear that we encourage any sort of engagement with faculty, and that we would be happy to write to faculty members on behalf of the writers to get an office hour or a meeting. So it was much more of an informal process, and it wasn't made compulsory on all the writers, but only those who could identify faculty members who had already contributed in the area they were interested in researching. And what we found was, I think we contacted 4 or 5 professors, and because the International Development Department does not have undergraduate courses, and the people who were contacting the faculty members were undergraduates, the faculty members were extremely helpful. And I think with two of them, we had a series of 3 office hours in which the researchers got all the information, details, methodology of the faculty's research, and they could write more about it. And I think even, I mean, not just the international development department, but because, international development, the field itself is so interdisciplinary, we couldn't limit it down just to the international development department. So we had writers reaching out to the sociology department, and even the professors, the faculty within that department, they really helped us through, definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. At the Economic Society, what we did was sort of a mixture. So we first had a sort of different way of mentoring scheme. The undergraduate tutor economics department has been really supportive of all the research endeavors that we've been doing from the start. And every academic year, the undergraduate tutor would send in formal email to all the faculty members at the economics department, and to basically introduce them to the role of the Economic Society and the sort of some research ideas that we're doing. Other than that, every year we also had a few faculty members who would serve as ad hoc advisors to any questions. So I actually think this model could also be feasible in the sense that it doesn't take up too much time of the academic staff, given that you have a better structure in terms of how much support you can provide, while you're not going onto a random goose chase in the sense that you have some dedicated academic staff rather than randomly going into, searching for professors whose interests are closely aligned. Not that it's a bad idea. I think it's also a great idea. And this year we're also looking into, instead of always trying to connect with academic staff who might be really out of their time, not out of the time, sorry, who might be very busy with their other commitments, we're trying to link and engage with PhD candidates and research students who have some experience in doing research. So we have been planning for a formal mentoring scheme where you would link interested PhD candidates with a few undergraduate students to first support maybe the undertaking project, and then to provide some other advice regarding the undergraduate's own projects.
Cool. Thanks so much, Eddie. Are there any other questions or comments on the benefits of student research or the integration between faculty and students? Serafina?
Yeah, I have a quick comment about the benefits. Well, the first one for me is the obvious one about learning, both for the writers and the peer reviewers, because it turned out that peer review process actually was very successful, because we thought that we would struggle in finding people who would peer review, and also asking our writers to peer review also was kind of doubtful at the beginning, because we were like, well, we are all master students, very busy, no one is not really interested. But it actually turned out we had almost everyone, I think only one person dropped out at some point, but all of our writers dedicated time. And I think that's actually very important and very beneficial, because most of the works coming to our journal are the assignments from our master's degree, because it's very fast, people are not really ready to dedicate to additional research. But it was really good in terms of getting additional feedback, because for the assignments we get very general and sometimes brief feedback, but in process of the peer review, you get quite detailed feedback. Yeah, of course it depends on your reviewer, but still it's additional comments. And at the same time, our I don't know if it works, I guess it works for most of the master's degrees. People come from very diverse backgrounds, and it's also interesting to get these perspectives from people from very, very different backgrounds, because on our program it's both people from the business background and technical background, those who are already mature, those who are just starting their careers. And I think this is really interesting, and peer review, even though like people get rejected, still they get some feedback and they know what they're gonna improve in future.
Great, thanks so much. This is the perfect segue into the next topic that I wanted to talk about, so thank you for that. So kind of moving away from the, the good stuff towards the potentially the challenges we face, we thought it would be really interesting to hear how you have found the process of attracting submissions, how that's going, especially in times of COVID, how you've generally found engagement over the past year, how you have been able to recruit reviewers, because we have had some ideas on potentially, for example, encouraging people to just submit their formative and summative essays for especially the blog pieces we post, because it's kind of a lower barrier to entry there. So we would just be really incredibly grateful to hear your thoughts on also alternative distribution channels and formats and how that's going for all your journals.
I think this is a super interesting and important topic. And I think it's especially interesting and important for a journal like ours, which has just started and doesn't have perhaps the reputation or the social media presence or the network, to be honest, of more established journals. So I'm really interested in hearing about how other journals have recruited both peer reviewers and submissions, because that's something that we're very focused on at the moment. At present, our strategy for recruiting, in particular for receiving submissions, has been to reach out directly to communications staff at universities to have them, or to ask them if they would be willing to circulate announcements on our behalf to students in graduate programs that are centered around security. So really our approach has been one of scale. I think we've reached out, or are reaching out, to 177 universities to try and secure those submissions, because the project is so new. But I would be really interested to hear how other journals go about promotion, and specifically on the issue of peer review for journals that are peer review journals. How do you go about approaching people to serve as peer reviewers, and how do you phrase it in particular to make the opportunity seem like an opportunity that would be beneficial to the peer reviewer, especially because in many respects it's a really significant favor that's being done to the journal by people who've chosen to peer review.
Anyone wants to? Yeah, go ahead.
If I could just comment quickly on the peer review system in the UPR. So that's mostly been done by the editorial division. So we recruit a team of 6 or 7 students every year who basically they're in charge of the peer reviewing for the journal that we will publish. And yeah, it's a really significant commitment because there's a lot to read and you have to read it really intently, which is why I think the editorial team tends to benefit from being of a larger size, which is good because each student has to peer review 1 or 2 articles in this person's entire perhaps stint with the UPR. So I guess as long as the articles are given to this person just earlier in advance, the task can be kind of broken down and into more manageable bite-sized pieces. So yeah, so on peer reviewing, we kind of internalize the process. And on the marketing front, our marketing division is really active in trying to engage the course conveners within LSE. So I guess we've been mostly trying to source formative or essays produced by students from within the LSE. And one rather effective way we've sort of done that is to reach out to the course convener themselves. And some of them have been very kind to sort of post a call for submissions on their lecture slides every week, so that students are kind of incentivized and motivated and reminded that this is something you can do to see your work being published. And it's sort of like a symbiotic sort of relationship as well, because this is been added as incentives in some way to get the students to kind of like submit better work, because not only will you get perhaps a very good mark from the course, but you'll also have an additional chance to see your work being published.
I completely agree. I think in terms of the editorial team, I agree that doing an in-house approach at the beginning would be more efficient. So similar to UPR, we actually have our own board of editors, which we recruit. But I think what's been really interesting and exciting to me is the continuation of support from previous members who are engaged with our research groups in the past. So we had a bit of a history, well, just 3 to 4 years really, to do serious academic research and try to formalize them in terms of academic papers. And the former heads of research division at the Economic Society or the former members of editorial board would still join us in helping to review some new papers. So I think the plus side was really that you have people who have more experience and people who understand better the entire process. And they're also very more passionate compared to maybe new entrance to the process. Another thing I'd like to add about promotion and marketing is I feel like there is a huge space to improve accessibility of research results and to gain from that in terms of marketing and improving the popularity of your work. So at least in the academics literature, and I'm sure in other social sciences as well, there's this new wave of trying to make your research more accessible by writing short summary articles. So in economics, we have two main platforms, one called VoxEU and the other called VoxDev. VoxDev was actually it was a project initiated by LSE faculty, where they would post very short articles summarizing the research and videos of researchers explaining their research in 3 minutes. And we've been trying to follow that approach to actually recruit interested students to write up non-technical summaries of past research papers published by Rationale, and then to use them to first increase the engagement with the outside public, and then also to create stronger incentives for people to know that your research project is being heard about and it's being communicated in a very fluid and non-technical fashion so people can understand.
I think as well, coming in from that, actually, we also, our submissions, what makes it easy for us to attract submissions is because we take different style of submissions that aren't extremely academic. Sometimes it means that people don't necessarily see the sort of completion of the research and everything like that is particularly burdensome, especially if they're doing a more creative piece around photography, or they're doing informal interviews, film reviews and stuff like that. And I think it gives them, if anything, we've had feedback from contributors who say it's a way to express their interest in the field, but in a way that's not like an extra thing on their like academic to-do list. It's like a breath of fresh air, and that like you get to express and research around a topic you're interested in, but in a medium that is a lot more, that's just different and varies. And I think that's kind of where we are very lucky to, it's a niche that we get to tap into quite well, especially around exam time. For example, the last thing people want to be doing is writing more like academic pieces and stuff. So maybe if they want to submit poetry or photography or anything like that around what they've experienced or something like that, we're really lucky in that regard. We're also very lucky because Earthrise actually operates across other universities as well. We have branches at SOAS, UCL, Imperial, Warwick. And that also means that submissions are like more diverse. We get a greater breadth of knowledge across the board because different universities specialize in different things. And so that kind of like diversity of content and diversity of where we're based is really helpful for submissions. And it's just basically what I can say from the experience is that exploring other avenues beyond typical calls for content really does help, I think is what I'm trying to.
Thanks so much, Emily. Any other comments on that topic or question? No. One thing that I just want to add, what we've done at UPR this year actually is that we've reached out to course conveners and specifically asked them to, ask them if they would be willing to encourage students to submit blog posts. And actually quite a few of them either already have that as part of the course, where one of the formative or even summative assignments is a blog post, or they have agreed to encourage people to write those. And we found that that was an incredibly fruitful avenue to get people to submit parts of the work, because I think, as Emily made clear, people, when there's exams and you're writing 10 summative essays at the same time, there's no, you don't really want to think anymore about formal research, and blog posts tend to be, fun and shorter too, so that barrier to participate is much lower there. Are there any other comments or questions on that topic, Lucy?
I'll just jump in and say to all the panelists, or at least the Houghton Street Press panelists, if there's anything you ever want to help, if you ever want help promoting stuff or getting the word out, just send anything to me and let me know, because I do look on Twitter regularly to see what you're all tweeting about and try to retweet you. But if there's something specific, just send it to me and I'll make sure that the library's tweeting it and Facebooking it, and we can get stuff into student news sometimes. So just keep sending me stuff. I won't mind.
Thanks so much, Lucy. This again is the perfect segue into, I guess, the last topic that we're going to have time to talk about today. Before that, I just want to mention, if any of the people in the audience have any questions or topics they would like to hear responses to, please just let me know in the chat or ask, raise your hand. I think there's a function down here. Cool. So the last topic that I think would be really cool, since we already have Claire and Lucy here, is support from the university / the administration. So I'd be really curious to hear what kind of support the journals present here have experienced, what they feel like has gone well, where potentially the administration, the university could do a better job. Because I think sometimes, I mean, as Lucy says, Claire and Lucy, you want to help, right? And I think sometimes it's just a lack of communication on both of our parts, really. So it would be really cool to just say if there's anything that you think you want more support on, anything that could be useful for the journals. Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a really important topic of conversation, and I just wondered if how much, I mean, this is a great initiative, and I'm wondering how much regular cross communication there is between the different journals at LSE, because I'm thinking, before I hear what people have for how the school can support them more, and I'm sure we can, it would be interesting to know if there's a sort of coming together and a sort of I don't know, I'm not saying everybody has exactly the same concerns, but I'm sure there are individual and overlapping issues, questions, and I just wonder if there's a way of having a channel that's more active and more regular.
Yeah, Claire, there should be, and that's probably on me to organise and get our student editorial boards together more often. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear from you guys about how regularly you'd like to meet and have discussions like this, because they are really interesting, and I can see you've got a lot to say. So yeah, that'll be something I'd be interested to know as well, and how you'd like that to happen.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on this, because I think we as a journal have reached out to the Undergraduate Political Review and also Millennium Journal, and sat down with people from both of those journals, and have found that process immensely helpful in developing as an organization. Obviously incredibly generous of both organizations to be supportive of us, and so I'd like to thank publicly, to a certain extent, publicly to thank you for your help in that regard, and also to say that I think that kind of information sharing is really critical for newer initiatives, and also probably for the rate at which journals are improving their practices, because the innovation of one journal, if it's successful, can be applied in other cases as well, and not all of the journals have to independently be reinventing the wheel. And for us, borrowing from the expertise of more established organizations has been really critical for helping us understand how to organize and what kind of practices are useful for developing as an organization. So I'd second the importance of that and also express my thanks.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything said before, because I also had these feelings. I'm a master's student, like I'm new to LSE, I don't know how everything works, and like 1 year it's just like nothing, it flies like that. And it would be really nice to have this cross-journal communication, because honestly, like I haven't heard about all the variety of journals we have at LSE. And it would be just nice to discuss these things. And also like as for the hopefully like a future alumni of LSE, I also would like to be involved in future with the research, because I myself, for example, like I had a work I would like to publish, but it doesn't really fit well to our journal theme. And I also would like to get some feedback from other people, like at least some peer review process, and maybe it would be possible to continue it after the graduation, because I mean, like masters, like it goes very fast and people, I think, just don't have time, because there is a wide variety of opportunities around LSE and you want to get involved with everything, and research takes some effort, especially intellectual effort. You are like with your assignments, but maybe you want to get to do something else, and it's not always possible. So yes, like I'm reading the message from our technician. I think it would be great, maybe like some Telegram channel, because it's quite convenient in terms of having functions both for chatting and for all the postings. So I'm really up to it, and I'm happy to help and contribute.
Yeah, I just want to come in here. We're technically a part of the Students' Union, which I think maybe a couple of other, like the Economic Society and International Development Society are. And the Student Union obviously has its problems, but what is good about them is that they have networks within them. So we're part of the Environmental Hub, which means that there's a big group chat with all environmental societies, which then means that we are able to promote the journal to other people in environmental related societies who are naturally going to be interested. And we're also part of the SU's media group, which again does, like, we can push our message to people who are interested in publishing and creative content and stuff like that. And I think that's a really good, like, building up these networks has been fantastic for Thrice especially, and to have it on the level with, for example, Houghton Street Press and LSE Press more generally would be really fantastic, and an avenue that hasn't been explored yet, and I think would be beneficial to all of us, as I'm sure you guys agree.
That's a great suggestion. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Serafina.
No, I had the same comment. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea, yeah.
Emily, can I follow up on that and just ask in terms of just practically how that works? Like, do you have a WhatsApp group? Do you have a Facebook group? How does, technically, how does it work?
Yeah, so all of the environmental societies committee members are part of an environmental chat on Facebook. And also there's a specific, within the SU, there's a specific environment and ethics officer who oversees a lot of that. Actually, what that position means is that there's a lot of someone to organize formally all the structures of it. And it means that there's also an Instagram account that promotes all like events, content, publications that are coming up within the environment field, which is very beneficial. And we've found a lot of people through that. So even if there was, like, for example, a social media account for like the student publications at LSE, I think that would be fantastic. And we found that Instagram content has been one of the #1 ways we've engaged with people this year, especially. And I think that could be a great avenue for, as we've said, like there's so many amazing publications at LSE, and it's just difficult to discover them all, especially if you're here at Masters, and to have them all sort of in one central place, I think would be fantastic because we all work so hard, so our work should be showcased as best as possible.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. Any other points on this? No, it's funny that we ended up here with this discussion, because this is one of the things that Vernon and I had talked about before the discussion, which would be kind of a nice, like, practical outcome to just like facilitate the communication and kind of establish regular meetings or a platform on which we can share our experiences, share our challenges and solutions to those. So this has been really great. I just want to check, are there any questions from the audience? Because we have a few minutes if there are any. And if not, do you guys have any other things that you want to talk about, Claire?
There are some questions in the Q&A. Oh, sorry, Lucy, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same thing. There are questions in the Q&A section.
Okay.
Can you see where that is? It's on the bottom of your screen.
I'm so bad with this, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. Also, yeah, one of the comments was to have more sessions like these targeted at incoming first years. I couldn't agree more. Actually, I think this would be interesting for us to just briefly talk about. In terms of engaging new students, how have you managed that as journals and how has your experience been?
So I think that for our subcommittee, we have 2 rounds of recruitment, and it's the second round in which we recruit incoming first years. And I think by that time, which is usually around November, December, the first years have sort of been a bit accustomed to LSE and they've settled in. And another thing that we did was that the first years were actually paired with another writer who was either in second year or third year. And they found this very helpful just because they still could pursue the topic of their interest, but also not be like completely independent. So they were getting guidance in terms of research as well. And I think that was really helpful for first year students.
Yeah, I completely agree with Zoya's comments. So for us, we've been hosting an annual essay competition to engage high school students with real recent event discussions and how to apply economics to analyze them. So last year we had 6 questions. Half of them were about COVID and especially optimal policies in a COVID era. And we were also really fortunate to work with the Center for Economic Performance at the LSE Economics Department. So they helped us promote the event and make it even more far-reaching. They were able to reach out to more high schools and actually engage with them. So that was what I felt was sort of successful in reaching out to more high school and incoming first year students. And another interesting thing that we plan to do, we actually did some of them, was in the incoming student day or the offer holders day, there would be some time for the panelists to introduce the societies and to introduce some of the work that we've been doing and some of the opportunities that as an incoming first year you would have.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you. Oh, Claire, sorry.
No, first of all, I'm just going to tell everybody that I have to leave, unfortunately, to chair another meeting at 4, but I just wanted to thank you all very much for a really valuable discussion. And what I think would be really a good thing to do, we could take up after the meeting, is to try and set up a meeting with obviously the representatives of the editorial journals, but maybe a wider audience with Professor Susanna Morato, who's the incoming new pro-director for research. So she's Professor of Geography and Environment, but she's replacing Simon Hicks, who's the current pro-director for research. She's going to take up a professorship at the European University Institute. So I think, you know, to get you on the map with Susanna right from the start would be another, and I'm very happy to sort of suggest this to her, or maybe Lucy wants to, whatever. I think so that she sees quite what an important role that you and your colleagues and your peer reviewers and your contributors are playing in contributing to LSE's research-rich environment. That's all I wanted to say, but thank you very much for inviting me along.
Thanks so much for coming, Claire. And definitely I have all your email addresses, so I'll just get in touch afterwards and we can discuss the logistics of this. This will be great. Thanks so much again, Claire. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, based on the discussion that we're having, one of the things that might be useful is to hold a sort of shared Freshers Week event across as many of the academic journals as we can find that publish student work, focused on the idea of publishing while you're a student at LSE for incoming first years and also for incoming postgraduate students as well. Maybe one for first years and one for postgrads if you want to split based on the demographics of the journals. But I think as a student, you're not going to hear about most of these journals while you're at LSE because there's so many of them and their interests are different. And so I think if we hold individual events, you're less likely to get attendance versus if we have an event that's shared and which is really designed on the broad idea of publishing and introducing people to all of the journals, so they have a sense of what the options look like.
We did something kind of similar. We had a freshers event basically as a journal, and partly it was to promote sort of the idea of community because we're very keen on emphasizing like a continuous community within Earthrise. But it was just obviously it was subject to COVID restrictions, but we did a walk around like nature in London, and we the editors sort of like talked to all the new students about our principles, what we're about, and things like that. And we thought that was really great in highlighting interest basically, because it was a social event that people could meet new people at, especially people who were passionate about the environment. And having that event at the beginning, even though obviously in-person events have pretty much ceased since then, having that, putting yourself on the map first, I think was really, really great, and building up the community and just getting people excited about potential contributions. Even if they didn't later contribute, it raised the profile of the journal and established it as a community for environment related people who have interest related to the environment. So I definitely think a freshers event or an event early on in the Michaelmas term of all the journals together would be really interesting.
That's a great suggestion. Unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time, and I didn't see some of the Q&A before, so it's kind of gonna be a bit of a mess. But if you all have like 3 or 4 more minutes, I think the last question actually that came in the Q&A about like the path dependency of student research, kind of the idea that those who have prior experience are so much more likely to be on subcommittees, but also to just like get research positions, research assistantships. I think this is a particularly relevant one, and I think it kind of speaks to the other 2 questions. So maybe if we want to just close on that, I would be extremely curious, because this has also been my personal experience. It was super hard for me to get like a research assistantship. And then once I had my first research assistantship, the other stuff just kind of fell in place, because you can prove to people that you have like those skills, right? But it's really hard to kind of like break that barrier the first time. So I'd be extremely curious what you guys think on that. And then unfortunately after that, we'll have to draw this to a close. Go ahead, Philippos.
If I may start, because I'll have to jump into another call. I've got a seminar running right now. So I can answer that because I think I fall into that category of not having much research experience, not being relatively junior as well, and actually not having any sort of contact with the social sciences before. I know research, but I know it from the side of biomedicine. It's very much different to how you publish research in the social sciences. When I read manuscripts in a social science context, I just couldn't understand, would this be publishable? Because I had clinical trials and protocols and stuff like that in my mind, which just didn't fit in this very tight box that research in the field of medicine might need to adhere to. I think the fact that we have these journals that allow the even more junior sort of researchers, or those who don't have any research experience, to engage in editorial duties, do some peer review on subjects they are not necessarily experts of. Like, this is what my main concern was when joining the journal. I wasn't really an expert in any area, but the fact that we have a very diverse board, we have some editors who are very senior, some have done a lot of research in the past, but we've got some who have absolutely zero research experience really. And the fact that you have this double-blind and moderated procedure by which I will do a peer review. I will send in my comments. I can discuss these comments with the editor who's in charge of that manuscript. It really helped. So I did my first review with a JPEG, and the fact that I had to actually read up on publication ethics, how do you conduct a peer review, how should you structure your comments, it actually helped me a lot to understand how do you even write a manuscript. So I don't think, at least in my mind, that there would be an issue with passive dependency, but this should be explicit in the sort of recruitment process. We should have it in the back of our minds that we have people who are junior, who are very keen to participate, and we should give them this opportunity to grow alongside those that are more experienced. So that's, I think that's my comment. I will unfortunately have to leave you, but thank you so much for this opportunity. And I hope I can engage with most of you again in a call in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming.
Bye-bye.
We'll be in touch. Bye-bye. Cool. Are there any other comments on this question before we close?
I guess a super quick comment would be, what goes into having research experience to begin with? And I feel like, having reflected on my past 2 years of study, that methodology is really, really important. People start their first year, second year without, proper courses in how to conduct research in the first place. And I was thinking that one fabulous opportunity to just have everyone up to date with social scientific methodology is really through LSE 100. So instead of doing topic focused themes every year for LSE 100, we could make it like a methodology class in an elective form, where a person would be able to choose from qualitative or quantitative methodologies, and they would pick the one that perhaps might respond the best or apply the best to their research interests. So this, once this person reaches their second year, for instance, they can sort of show whatever position that they're applying for, that, hey, they have acquired a year's worth of relevant methods experience that is directly relevant to this project. So I think, this is an opportunity to kind of, revamp or to improve our current LSE 100 system, just to sort of add a bit of methodological, maturity to our undergraduate students.
Yeah, I think another interesting avenue is really if we host some sessions where we could connect interested students who want to know more about methodologies with students who have more experience in doing it. So last year we held the first research incubator session. It was mainly based on a program called Pon4Qual. I think some of you might be familiar with it. Basically, it was a session to introduce students who work more in the qualitative side of social sciences into some of the quantitative techniques. And we tried to make it very accessible and finish with an optional group project where students would replicate some existing social science papers findings and try to add up to the literature, think about the limitations. But in general, I think we would also have the capacity to actually introduce to some of the students some of the research methodologies by hosting more of these sessions. Because from what we heard based on the feedback, I think there's really very high demand, like you said, and obviously we can definitely do more, and to introduce more of the, or to basically involve more of the students who would also want to improve their ability to teach and improve their ability to actually explain to people what all of these methods they've been using represent.
Thanks so much, Eddie. Mark, go ahead.
I'll be really quick and just a practical comment on this question, which is one of the things we tried to do in the recruitment of editors and other roles within our organization, was to focus on the work itself. So asking for writing samples and focusing on the quality of the writing samples as the core component of the recruitment process, rather than on past experience, to try and give students who have high academic aptitude, but maybe for specifically editing type roles, who have high academic aptitude, but perhaps don't have past experience as research assistants or in those kinds of functions, a way of entering the organization.
Thanks so much. I think that's a really good approach. Are there any other final comments before we close this? No? Cool. In that case, thank you all so much for coming, especially thanks to Lucy for taking so much time out of your afternoon to, join us. Yeah, I'm really glad how this went. I think there's a lot of, potential avenues for us to collaborate and to improve collectively on our work. And yeah, I think I'll be in touch via email on like setting up some form of a platform to facilitate this kind of thing in the future. Cool. If there are no other questions, thank you all so much again. It was really great to have you all, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.